Well, welcome back to another episode of Rethink Real Estate, folks. Today, I get the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Dean Cottrill. Dean is the Executive Vice President of Brokerage and Team Consulting at T360. First of all, T360, the company, is a company that we've used as a great resource to us for data, for industry insights, for many, many different things when it comes to the real estate space. T360 is the largest independently owned real estate consulting company in North America. And they deal with everybody. Now, from small boutique brokerages all the way up to the very large enterprise companies. They publish trend reports. They publish the top 1,000 or the mega 1,000 brokerages. Their data analytics on the industry itself are absolutely immense. Dean has an extensive background from starting as your typical salesperson or sales agent within real estate, then leading Coldwell Banker's NRT, one of the presidents of that individual part of the Coldwell Banker business, and leading into the independent consulting side of the business. They liken it to the likes of McKinsey in the consulting space for corporate industry, and they have done a wonderful job becoming a very good partner to a great deal of people in the real estate space. Dean's insights is going into brokerages every day and making them more efficient, whether it be brokerage, but also doing it in large teams and doing it in large enterprise spaces, providing benchmarks to show what they should be measuring themselves at, what type of growth they should be at, and just a great deal of other awesome things. Today's episode, we run through industry change. We talk about commission splits, different models. We talk about the enterprise model. We talk about the lawsuits that are happening in the buyer side space as well. Again, Dean is a great resource. We really thank him for being on the podcast, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, folks, here we are with Dean. Obviously, we've given Dean a pretty big introduction to this episode, and we're thrilled because we've been exposed to Dean and T360 for some time as a network. Dean, thanks so much for joining us.
Ben, thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So, Dean, the thing that I am very excited about for the audience today is to understand a little bit more about your role. Whilst I've given it a bit of an introduction to your background and what you do, sure. I think that the wealth of knowledge that you can bring from an industry outlook based on the fact that you guys are a real estate consulting company that works with so many different brokerages, so many different models, so many different areas, markets, all that stuff.
Right.
But for the people listening, I guess, if you were going to sum up what you do on a daily basis most, what would that be?
Yeah. So executives / leaders within our industry, whether they run brokerages, whether they're enterprise brokerages like the big names, the big organizations like you guys and others, to those that are franchisees, as an example, or independent brokerage owners, and also team leaders that are running organizations. Frankly, some are very successful in the size of brokerages. And they come to us and we work with them to help them create more efficiency, be more effective in their roles as leaders, and help them drive higher levels of profitability. And so we dive into many different areas of analyzing their business, working with them to understand their vision, because everyone's got a different vision of where they want to go. And then we help put those building blocks in place to support them in that journey. And we create a roadmap. We help them build a roadmap with milestones in that path that help them on that course so they can track, see how they're doing, and then have the ability to share benchmarks with them in their performance so they can they can watch their business, understand what trends are happening within their business. And also the outside, we take that into account, and that's something I know we're going to talk about with the outside and the change in the marketplace. But knowing that and being aware of it, but also looking internally at their organization, what trends are they seeing in some key areas of their business, so they can literally, instead of making guesses, they're making more executive level decisions from information that's right in front of them that enables them to be higher level and higher performing leaders.
I think that it's a really interesting perspective, because if I was to reflect on my position as a leader within my own company and the people within my company, is that, let's say that I was, one of our best teams came to me for advice.
Right.
Whilst I try and do a very good job of keeping a very lateral view of things and what other businesses are doing and what other teams are doing and what other companies are doing, it's very, very difficult, because there is this silo that we live in as leaders within our own companies that might make us, maybe more shallower thinkers than what you would be. So I think that you said something really interesting there about benchmarks, because we've used that from T360 previously. Could you
Mhm.
just give us a bit of an idea of what T360 is as a whole,
Yeah.
the company itself, so people understand your depth in the industry?
You bet, you bet. So I'll start with our founder because it really puts it in perspective to a certain degree. So Stefan Swanpool is our chairman and founder of our business, and Stefan's got a long history in our space. Um, the one piece about Stefan I like to put out is actually he grew up. His dad was a diplomat, so he grew up in South Africa. Spent a good bit of his life there before coming to the U.S. And at 17, he was the national chess champion in South Africa. So, and it wasn't a one off. He actually is a multi year national chess champion. So he is a very strategic thinker. And one of the things that Stefan wanted to do, and he felt that probably about 10 years ago, that our industry, the real estate industry in North America, was ready for a McKinsey, a Boston, consulting organization that was going to be something that an organization could come to us and get multiple lines of support and not be just a mom and pop, like one person off consultant, someone who's got a lot of experience and insight and can share and work with somebody. But so T3 and Stefan went and brought in Jack Miller, and Jack is our CEO president. And they've built out an organization that has multiple layers, multiple areas of support within our ecosystem. I always say within the white picket fence of residential real estate is where we operate. And we are the largest consulting organization in North America, specifically focused in that white picket fence of residential real estate. So I run the brokerage, me and Lisa Picardo on our team, and we have a couple other team members as well, and Ernie Winehouse is on our team. So we have some really high quality, very talented, very experienced, successful leaders that come from their own experiences, their own journeys, and they work with organizations in the brokerage and the team area. Then we
Right.
have a technology division, we have an events division, we have a hiring division, we call it T3 Talent, that we place about 70 management to C-level executives a year. We have a strategies area, which puts together our T3 trends report every year, which comes out in December, where we really spend we think about the biggest trends affecting our business, and we spend roughly about 1,000 hours on average deep diving into these areas, and we write about it.
Yeah.
And that comes out T3 Trends. We do the Almanac. We rank the top 1,000 brokerages. It's all part of that division. And so there's multiple areas that we support. And we have publications, and we have actually a cousin company now called Real Estate News that we launched last October. And I say we launched it. We really want to run it separately. It's a Real Estate News. So it's basically try to get away from the TMZ kind of news world of real estate and give factual, more of like a Wall Street Journal approach of here are the facts going on in our business, and this is what we see. So
I
that's
think
our
that'd be really cool actually to take a look at. What was it? Real Estate News, was it?
Real
Or
Estate News. Yeah,
yeah, because
realestatenews.com.
I don't want to cast dispersions on other products, but like the Real Deal has gotten very TMZ like, and then also Inman has gotten, I don't know, it's just gotten, it feels like Inman only reports on the people, good news on the people that give him money. Like it's not very neutral, and that's what I've always found you guys to be. I was talking to actually a couple of the guys out here before the podcast. I'm like, I'm really looking forward to having Dean on, but I'm also not looking forward to having Dean on because I'm kind of giving away sort of my own almanac of where I get all my sort of good information from. That because whilst you guys are the largest consulting company in North America from a real estate standpoint, a lot of people like from the grassroots level probably don't know you guys as well.
Correct.
And I get to use the almanac, the trends report, and everything can be like sort of rip off and duplicate a little bit of it.
Sure.
So because it's phenomenal information, and I think that if people are looking to be a true master of their craft, you've got to know what the industry is doing. And I think that that's what you guys have done a phenomenal job of, is really looking into the industry deeper. And that's where I want to take this conversation a little bit more, Dean, is I want to go next to just an overall feel of our industry at the moment. It is a general question. I'm sorry, it's this, it's a very, open-ended question, but how do you feel about our industry as a whole at the moment?
I feel good about it. I feel great about it. We have changes in the market. That's probably more directed to your question, with the market off in the units. I've been doing this since 1989, 1990. So I've seen quite a few ups and downs in the market. There are four specific phases in a real estate cycle. We're going through one of those phases right now. It is challenging. There are challenges in any market. So if we go back a year, 2 years before the units started diving off last year, which literally last year as an example, they started coming off a little bit in January and February, March. Really, it was so slight of an off year over year number. It wasn't something a lot of people kind of worried about or paid much attention to. Because the other piece of that is the prices kept appreciating because of the lack of inventory. And so that was something everyone's like, everything's great. And then really it hit the fan in May and June is where the downturn really took place more so, and brought about this really reduction in units because the interest rates increasing and things like that. But I feel, someone in our space, this is a tremendous area of business. Really, you can be in a lot of different businesses. If you're in the real estate business, you're an entrepreneur, you're out there. And what I loved about this, and I'll give you a little side personal story kind of to illuminate to this question, Ben. I came out of college. I come from a family of accountants. We're all bean counters. My dad, I have three brothers. We're all bean counters. And I have an identical twin brother. And him and I went running out of accounting. We were like, I'm out of here. So I left right out of college, 6 months, went to a community college right outside of Washington, D.C., got a real estate license. And because I love the entrepreneur piece, I love the actual, there's no ceiling for anyone in our space. The ceiling is what we make it, how hard we work, how hard we learn and push ourselves to know more about our business. And that's what I loved about it. So literally started with investing and buying foreclosures at the courthouse steps and did all that back in 1989, 1990, 1991. And that was a downturn. That was an off market. Desert Storm started right at that time. So we had a lot of things going on in the world. And so market was off, and it was a challenging time in a reduction in units, things along those lines. We also saw that, of course, and we call it the Great Recession in 2000, really 7, really 8, 9, and 10, those years and things like that. So there's changes, there's growth cycles, there's recessions in housing, but what a great business. So, you can set your own mark. You can go out there, I always say kind of hand-to-hand combat against your competitors. Maybe kind of goes in the wrong way, maybe for some, but the idea is out there, you've got to do your best every day, perform at your best, push yourselves. And it's a great field to be on because you have the ability to just set incredible. I mean, I've worked with so many people that have made so many dreams come true for themselves in both monetary and then also things they want to do in building wealth and things along those lines, but also they've impacted people they've worked with. And that's one of the things that got me jazzed to move out of sales. After about 8 years, I moved into management roles and then running real estate companies, is I loved helping people. That was kind of the core driver. I just enjoyed it. I remember being in a course, a CRS course years ago. It was in the early 90s. And an instructor came in from California, and he asked me the question, this room full of people. He says, so why do you do this? And I said, I love the feeling of sitting at that settlement table and the keys getting moved across that table. And I had something to do with this family or this person or this family's move and one of the biggest purchases, if not the biggest in their life. And it just gives me goosebumps to this day thinking, I had something to do with it. I had a positive impact in someone's life. And he says, no, you don't. You don't do it for that unless you're independently wealthy. And you're doing this for for that reason. Other than that, you're doing it for the money. And one of the residual benefits of our business is that we're helping people and we're helping them. So, I wasn't happy about that at the time. I was much younger, but I was like, you know what? I get it. I get it where he's coming from. And I agree with that. So you can make tremendous income. You can create great wealth if you work and you perform and you improve at our business. But you also have the ability to impact people, whether it's your consumers, your buyers and sellers, that you work with and you help, or it's actually, if you're in a leadership role, it's the people that you're supporting to help them run better businesses.
Yeah. Well, I guess that, there's a multitude of different layers within the real estate industry that you get to see. First of all, you get to see the bigger side of it in the sense of the company owned big brands, publicly traded franchises, all of that stuff there. Then
Yeah.
you've got the brokers, right? And then you've got the brokerages, so the offices themselves and the companies themselves. And then you've got the individual teams that are amongst that. Could we break those, let's call it three sectors down, and let's talk
Yeah.
about, I want to. This might be a little bit more cynical of asking the question of threats in those sectors, but I've often found that when I ask a little bit more cynical questions, people get a little bit more intrigued. Playing to the audience here, Dean, is that,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you think the biggest threat is from a company perspective? Like, whether it's company owned, whether it's publicly traded, whether it's physical location, whether it's franchise. What do you think is the biggest threat in our industry from a company, a branding, that all perspective?
I think I'll go at this direction. Hopefully, I'll answer the question. I think the middle is going to be eaten up. So the large guys are in a good place. They're somewhat, and this is not the right thing, but they're more insulated in their size and their ability. Now, saying that, there's some that are losing quite a bit of money,
Mm.
but they're pivoting and they're doing some things to help adjust that and get through this trough of lower units as we come out of this. And then the bottom, the boutiques, the other smaller entities that are out there, whether they're franchisees, independents, teams, things like that. One of the great benefits to us in our business and those that are on the ground, and we've had so many people on the outside in the tech world try to come in and remove the agent, for example, or the broker from the equation. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. In my 33 plus years, it has not worked. In that belly to belly, that relationship is still today as valuable, if not more, because there's so much noise in the world compared to where it was, 30, 20, even 15 years ago, 10 years ago. So that middle, now, so the enterprise, and this is how we break it up. We do the enterprise. So you talk about the enterprise operations, the big ones, and some of those will have company-owned stores and they have franchises. So that's the big guys, right? And then you have brokerages, right? That could be independent, it could be franchisees in that. And then underneath you, like you said, you have teams. So then you have the teams that operate in there. And some teams have formed teamerages. So they're a team that have moved into a franchise or into a brokerage, or they've created their own independent brokerage. So there's kind of an interesting thing that's happened over last number of years, where those teams have moved out and kind of done their own thing, and they've either picked their flag, whether it's a franchise for the tools and systems and the brand name, whether it's an independent, they just want to do it. They're kind of independent mind thinking, and they want to do things. Or there's another area is they're a game changer. Like, you know what, I'm changing the game. That was like, a couple of organizations came out and said, you know what, everyone's going this way. I'm going to go this way on this item or that item. So to your direct question, though, about what are the threats, things like that, ultimately, it really comes back down to the biggest key is leadership. If you take an organization with the same toolbox, the same brand, the same tools, same tech stack, you name it, and you put it in different places around North America, some are killing it and some aren't. Why is that? And the answer is that you typically have a very dynamic leader in the one that's winning the day, who is carrying that flag, who owns it, and they're magnetic and they're attracting, and they're a strong magnet in that they're attracting great talent, they're retaining great talent. And one of the things that we see in leaders that are magnetic is that they're trying to always improve, not always is overused, but they're improving themselves. They're open to improvement. They're not stuck on the thing, I know everything and you can't tell me anything. It's more like, I know I don't know everything. I don't know what I don't know. But I know a lot. Actually, I'm very successful. I get that. And there's confidence in that. But there's also some sense of being humble that there are some things I don't know. Yeah. And so, so I'm eager to learn and to try to see around that next corner and help support my organization, my teams, my agents to help get in the right place or the better place to be able to improve this. Ultimately, you think about a wave, like riding a wave. I'm going to Australia now, you guys. So you want to ride a nice wave. You don't want to be behind the wave, right? Timing is so important. So you want somebody you don't want to be in front of it either, or you're just going to get thrown over. So you want to time this. You want to see things coming, and then have the awareness of, okay, what am I going to do when this market turns down? And so when it's turning down, I see it coming. What are the things I want to do in my organization to help me move through this time and to be in a better place, a stronger place, and a place that I can actually take advantage of these changes? And there are opportunities in this market. If some people are just batting down the hatches and say, you know what, let's just hold up. Let me just cut expenses, and let's sit back and let's hold in here. And there are others that say, you know what, I knew there's 4 cycles in a real. I'm just kind of going at a high level here. I have an understanding that there are changes in the market, and the idea for 12 years, it was actually one of the longest growth cycles of the 4 cycles, which is growth, one of them. And then we've seen in 100 years. It's been very long. So it's gone from 2010, 11, all the way to the 2022, last year, right? It started taking off. So that's a long period of time. The average time for the total 4 cycles is 16, 18 years.
Right.
So we're talking about 12 years of that. So the recessionary period of a cycle is it's the shortest, thank God, knock on wood. That's the shortest. And it's roughly 2 to 3 years is the recessionary time. And we're in that. Housing's going through a challenge recession. One of the things that we're seeing because of the lack of inventory is this recession is different than other recessions that we've seen in the past, because inventories are so low that we're still seeing prices. There might be off in some areas. Some are still appreciating. We're actually still getting some price growth in some areas as well. So I know I kind of jumped around a little bit to your question.
No. I like it. No, I like the general perspective of it. Like, I think that people can really take in Dean, you would drink from a fire hose on a daily basis from the level of information that you're taking in. So we appreciate the perspective. The one thing I did want to sort of understand your perspective on as well is that these bigger guys they were in acquisition mode, where they were just buying as many companies or acquiring, or as many companies as they possibly could.
Right.
I haven't seen that work, and there's been a few of the executives in those enterprise companies that are at the high end of that have admitted that joining 2 cultures together doesn't work as well as what anyone really would have thought it would be. And net, it doesn't come out really in the positive most of the time. What's your thoughts on that?
It all depends on the leaders and leadership. So I've seen it work. I've seen it work very successfully. Mm-hmm. If we go flashback, just look at history, right? And success leaves clues. So if you look back in the 90s, that's where at the time it was Sendent, which turned into Realogy, which is now called Anywhere. They were out acquiring companies, and part of their plan was, let me acquire in some of the largest metropolitan markets in the country. I'm going to acquire organizations, and I'm going to transition their organization into one of our brands from our enterprise brands, and they're going to pick whichever one that was going to be. And that's where I spent, as you probably remember, I spent time there. I was 10 years at the company-owned stores,
yes.
Which was called NRT. So they basically took those organizations and they merged them in, but it was all part of the strategic thinking and planning of that. So through an acquisition, to your direct question, let's bring the owner in. There's been quite a few acquisitions over the last number of years that the owners have kept a stake, have kept some skin in the game, where the acquisition wasn't 100%. It wasn't like a 100% buyout. Now there's been quite a few of those, and people are like, I'm ready to exit. But there's been quite a few who says, you know what, I want that. Let me take some money off the table now as an owner, and I'll keep 30% of the business. So I keep some skin in it. I'm going to keep working it, things along those lines. So there's that piece to the ownership, and we see that quite a bit in the acquisition space. And then there's the other side of the equation where people buy in, and if you think of this, if you try to push somebody to do something or accept something, they push back. Yeah. It's just kind of human nature. So you have to be very strategic on when you acquire and how you do the rollouts, and how that former owner, that past owner, is integrated in that transition and things like that. The ones that blow up is where you don't integrate that former owner into the equation, or that it's bitter, or it was something that through the negotiation it wasn't a win-win. It was a win-lose, and then that person that was the past owner lost in their mind in this acquisition or sale, and they're bitter. Then that could that opens the door to losses, And yeah, that happens. That
Yeah.
does happen. I'm trying to think of the term. There's a term that's used, breakage. That's what it is. It's called breakage. So when we do acquisitions, you kind of calculate what the breakage is. So you look at the gross commission income. You could equate it down to number of agents and say, okay, what's the breakage? And so and typically through this formula, when you're doing an acquisition, you say, okay, I'm going to build in a 25% breakage on the GCI because I think this is going to be a little bitter. It's more of a win-lose. I don't know how well this leader is going to be very supportive in this process. Or I'm switching them out from this kind of commission level to this one. And so that's going to be some breakage as well. So it comes into the equation, frankly, for the acquisition costs.
Because change is obviously an excuse for anybody to look elsewhere, and
That's
that probably leads me now to more of the brokerage question. Now, there are so many different models out there now from a perspective of 100% splits, essentially, basically offices paying agents to be there,
Yeah.
to use ancillary services and things along those lines. There's more of your traditional brokerages splits that are probably more designed for the agents that are starting off that need that deeper level of support. You've got the online brokerages, you've got the Compasses of the world that were offering the bonus incentives, and then you had Reology / Anywhere doing the same thing in order to combat that as well.
Right.
It's been an interesting, and I'm going to call it a battlefield. It's been an interesting battlefield over the last number of years because of how much money has been thrown at this space.
Yeah.
What do you see with the noise and the confusion and the different models that are out there at the moment, Dean? Like I'm sure that you get questions. You're sitting in front of a business owner. They've got a brokerage in the Midwest or somewhere along those lines, and they're battling against these companies that are doing caps at $7,000, and you've got to run 400 agents in order to have it be any type of profitability or success in any way, shape, or form. And it feels metallic. It doesn't feel like there's a culture and all of these different things.
Yeah.
They're going, well, what do I do, Dean? It just feels like the industry has cannibalized itself on the split side of the business. No agent wants to see value anymore. It's more along the lines of either how much will you pay me or how low is your split?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very true. And there's one of my first reaction is there's so many different models, to your point, Ben, that are out there, and I've seen all of them. I'd say almost all of them. I've seen a lot of all of them, or they're just a little abbreviation of something I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them that are very successful at any area. And I've seen some that are not successful, right? And it comes back to what I was mentioning earlier about that leadership piece. And then whatever that value proposition is. So if you have a low fee brokerage model as an example, that typically they don't have the revenue, the income, the company dollar to invest a lot of money in tools and systems and support and things like that. And typically the sales professionals who join that organization have that understanding and they're okay with it. And the other ones on the other side, so this flipped to the complete opposite where you have someone who gives everything. I'll go to a team, leave the brokerage and say a team ridge where a team's going to give you the leads, going to have an ISA, internal sales agent, who's going to do the incubation, hand you the lead. Here's the appointment, actually give you an appointment. You go out, show the house, write the offer. And then after, have transaction coordinators, TCs that help support the whole thing to closing. So the amount of work for the agent's much less. So they're doing a ton over here. And you see both being, some of the agents on the team, they're good to do that because that's all really they want to do. They don't want to be over here, right? And so that money is not a lure for them. And over here, and as toward a fee thing, you'll typically, and I know commissions are negotiable with this full disclosure, as we know, but on this, in the kind of a compensation piece to the agent as toward what they're making, this agent here is going to make a lot less of that dollar than this agent over here is. And that's part of it. So it ultimately comes down to the ability for leaders and organizations to clearly articulate their value proposition in a very clear, very concise, very compelling way. There's the 3 C's: clear, concise, and compelling. And so that's the kind of elevator speech. If I got an elevator and you're running a brokerage, what do you do? Why would I join you? What's that clear, concise, compelling reason that you can share with me? And there's more involved in it. I'm just like, to the point though, these leaders should be so in their minds, passionate about what they bring to the table and how they're going to make a difference in this person's life. and things along those lines.
Yeah.
And that could be, and I've got passionate people at both sides of the spectrum. So someone who's saying, hey, you know what, I'll give you 110%, like you're using your words there, or whatever the number was, right? Passionate about what they're doing, and they're feeling like this is the right thing for the industry and for the agents they work with. And you got others on this side saying, I'm giving all the tools and systems to support. I've got staff in place. But I'm doing all this to support your business, to help elevate you. I use an analogy like over here, I'm going to wash your car, detail it, fill up your gas tank before you even leave the house, right? All you got to do is go out and do your thing. This one over here says, you got to go out. You got to fill up your tank. You got to wash your car. You got to detail it if you're ever going to do that, things like that. You got to research the technologies and understand, so there's opposites. And it's whoever can, number one, who's doing the outreach. I think that's what we see sometimes is a lot of the leaders are not actively outreaching to the both the new agent part of the funnel, recruiting funnel, and the experienced agent recruiting funnel. And then what are they saying to them, and how do they differentiate themselves in that conversation? And I think most people, if you ask them as leaders, what is your system, whether it's a new agent or experienced, starting at the very top, as toward, I always say, spinning plates, what are the activities you're doing to bring people to you? And when they come to you, what do you say to help separate yourself and share and show value? And most people can't share all that in much detail because frankly, they're not doing it enough, and they haven't honed in or thought about this enough. And so that's a critical piece right there by itself.
Yeah.
To have that all in place.
It's interesting, the identification of going through with our business partners and going through in our own right with our own corporately owned offices and things along those lines. I made a transition and a conversation with a lot of our people, a long time ago. Everyone's like, no, I want an experienced agent. I'm like, okay, well, you are prepared to give away your profit in order to get that experienced agent, because you can't compete getting an experienced agent if they're out there doing the business, or they have a perception that they're an experienced agent. Even if they're not an experienced agent, they're going to want you to give them the farm in order to join them based on all of the noise that is being created by all of these other companies. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, okay, well, no, I still want to make profit. Great, excellent. So we need to embrace the new agent. We need to be able to do more work. We need to work with them all the way through and be part of their journey for as long as we possibly can be, and actually work with them on that process and have the systems in place to do so. And then, well, that sounds like a lot of work. It's like, well, if you want the money, it's a lot of work. It's identifying. I think that's the thing that I take out of that conversation, Dean, is that, and what you've just said is that you've got to identify the people that you want to attract, and then you've got to be realistic in that market. But there's a part of this that I deal with on a daily basis with people in the industry, as you would as well, is there's a level of frustration around the big guys that, or the well-funded guys that have really sort of changed the industry in a way without proving that it's profitable, or that the company can coexist. Now, again, I know that you're in a position where you probably can't speak specifically to brands, so I can't obviously ask you to do that, but I can, is that Compass is a prime example for me in the sense that, of course, if you gave me $1 billion, I honestly think I could probably buy myself way to number one market share of transactions. But that said, is they haven't proven that what they have done is a profitable business unit that is sustainable for the future. It's the same with EXP to an extent. It's the same with Real. It's the same with those online businesses that, whilst they are very well funded through the means of being funded through public offerings, through VCs, through all of that stuff, they haven't proven the long game in any way, shape, or form. Now, don't get me wrong. There's the people on the sidelines that are the spiteful onlookers that are like, oh, they'll go broke one day. There's too much money out there in the world, and their businesses are too big now for them to ever really fail in one way, shape, or form. They might not make money, but they'll probably still exist, right? So what would you say to a broker that is literally just cynical on the space because of, yes, it doesn't logically make sense, but we're kind of in a business where that if you apply logic to this equation, it's probably not going to turn out 100% right.
Yeah. My first thought is sometimes you got to understand the noise that's in the world and all this for that perspective, but it becomes noise. And what happens is then you get lost in worrying about things that frankly you have not that much control over. So that said, control what you can control. And this goes back to what I said. So in your individual area that you have your brokerage, for example, own it. Be that broker in that market that people look to as, a stand-up person, and you do some phenomenal things in your outreach. You connect with people. You have a great culture and organization. People love you. They don't have to love you. Maybe they like you and they admire maybe who you are and how you've grown and how you help people. Philanthropic work, things like that. What's the culture? Get some connectivity, and then you rinse and repeat it in other areas. Some of these guys that with that one, it was 1.3 billion in total it raised, I thought, through Compass. So it was a lot. And same thing when I remember when I was at NRT with Anywhere at the time, it was Realogy, and there was so much debt on the books, and everyone's saying, "Oh, they're going to go under, they're going to blah blah," and they're still out, still running around, still doing some, a ton of business, and so on and so forth. So to your point, I agree with you. These big guys, there's going to be something for them. They're doing so much business out there that I don't see that imploding and disappearing. Something would potentially, but again, these are things you have no control over. So it's good to know and understand what's their value prop, or what is. And I just did an exercise. We do an exercise with clients. Two of them you just mentioned. One was like personas. So when you're going to recruit somebody, what is their persona? Or think of an avatar, and it kind of throws their people off because of the movie, right? The movies now, but avatar. What's the persona or the avatar who you want to recruit? What do they look like in the form of what are their needs? What are their wants? And then what do you have in the form of systems, tools, support to help them in those wants, needs? And you might isolate, you might see gaps in your offer. You might see things like that. So it comes back to kind of blocking and tackling in your local market. The other piece that we encourage on an annual basis that we do with our clients is a competitive assessment. Do a SWOT analysis. Look at your organization. Look at your biggest competitors. What is their offer? I mean, it's amazing how we do this. We do this exercise quite a bit. And the knowledge of one franchise or owner or independent or whatever to the market is really low.
Yeah. I've found they've created this. They've created the other's value proposition in their own mind, and it's not 100% accurate.
That's right. That's exactly right. And some of that other value proposition, once you start diving into this, you can start picking it apart. You can start saying, you know what, I'm putting holes in this because that's not accurate. And then what happens is your level of confidence goes higher as a leader for what your offer is. And then you can maybe see some gaps. Say, you know what, I like what they're doing there. They are doing that. I'm going to start doing that. Or I'm going to not do exactly that. Maybe I'm going to do a little bit of a twist on that. But I like that as toward how I want to run my business. But that over there, a couple other things. So that's where you kind of look at it. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are my threats? And do the same thing for your biggest competitors. We recommend 4 to 6 of your biggest competitors. If that doesn't include, and if you're not the number one market share player, I would always do the number one market share player just to see, hey, success leaves clues. What are they doing? What's going on? What's in their toolbox? Why are they so successful? And you learn from this exercise, and you can learn what are some of your holes, what are some things you need to shore up, and what are the same things you need to add. And you might find also there's quite a few things, and most of us in our brokerage world, we don't have a stop doing list. There could be things you need to stop doing. You're spending too much time or energy or money in an area that's doing nothing for you or very little for you, and you need to pivot. And you need to get away from that and go this direction. So it's really it's a way to do like a cold shower every year and say, okay, and that's a kind of interesting analogy. I don't know where I came with that. But, a cold shower and say, you know what, wake up and let's look at the market for it is today, because people are changing their fee structures. They're changing their comp structures. They're changing their offer. They're changing their square footage, their footprint. They're changing their staff. They're doing a lot of changes, especially in, to your earlier point, Ben, especially in today's market. People are starting to make changes. They're tightening their belt. They're doing things. So those reasons, some of those agents in those areas, those offices, those organizations are like, that's when you get people that move, because when things start changing, people get ruffled and they're like, what else is out there? Let me look what else is out there. And the organizations who have done this work and aren't like starting now, they've been working on this. And if you haven't started this, like Jack always says, Jack Miller, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago or today. Yeah. Right? So if you haven't done this work, do it today. Start analyzing, looking at that. And then you become, as a leader, much more confident about who you are in the market, what you offer. And then when an agent comes in as a retention interview and says, hey, I'm thinking about leaving, you can have a really good business meeting with them and talk about it and look at their current business the last 12 months and where that business came from and how you supported it and what do they do over there, and have that conversation, not in a defensive way, but in a proactive business approach way. And the same thing on the recruiting front. You can actually sit down with recruits who are interviewing multiple players and be able to talk very knowledgeably about your value difference, your unique value difference compared to them. And one quick aside on that, because I don't want people to, when you sit there and just kind of regurgitate all you have and the tools and how you're awesome, that's not how the interview should go. It should be completely the opposite. Tell me about you. What are your goals? And how potentially then we could work together. Are we compatible? We always start with compatibility. Are we going to be compatible as business partners? What are your aspirations? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And then let's talk about that. And let's talk about what we provide and what we do to help support our business partners, to help them reach their goals.
Yeah.
And that's kind of more of the approach.
Yeah, no. Well, I guess that, the part of this also then breaking it down into, trends. We're speaking about different trends in the market, different companies, the way that they're structured and everything along those lines. I really want to spend a little bit of time with you on your perception of where we're going. You're part of an organization that very much focuses on finding the path or looking at historical data in order to try and find the path forward. So I think that you can speak to it from a place of good knowledge. Where are we going from a real estate market perspective? Because, this could possibly be the Great Recession. And what I mean by that is it could be the Great Recession of units sold, numbers. And it is already. But, how long does that last? Is there a tipping point coming for the future? What are you telling the people that you're working with at the moment to prepare for, or what are you building them for the future?
Yeah. So statistically, it's 2 to 3 years is what we typically see. We're already in this. We're heading to 1 year come next month, May, June, in my opinion. So we're already moving through this. But that said, we're off. Every market's different and unique. So we are seeing like a wet blanket going across the country as toward units being down and suppressed because of the interest rate increases and what happened with the Fed increasing the rates. And so that's affected a lot of markets, some markets more than others. So this is all market dependent. Some markets that we look at or we work with clients in, they're down 30%. Some are down more than 30. Some are down 20. We look across the country, some are right around that level. Some are not down much at all, maybe a couple percent. So one quick aside is, before we talk about where we're going, is as an organization, you always want to compare yourself to your market. So are you gaining ground or are you losing ground? Average sales price, units, those are the two easiest ones. All right, what's going on in my market? Oh, the association, the MLS says, hey, our market's down at closed units year to date, X percent. Where are you? Are you down that same? Are you riding the tide? And if you are, you don't want to ride the tide. You want to improve, right? Gain ground. So that's where you want to pay attention. And that includes both units and price. Where are you on price? Because that's one of the things you have some control over, where you can position the organization to go after some higher price point markets and things like that. So that's another piece of the equation, right? So where we're going is that we're seeing a compression of the units. That's already been, and what happened too, go back, if I can flash back to like end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter last year, there was a panic. There was a sense, and the panic's probably a little too much, but there was a sense like, all right, when are we going to bottom out here? And there was, in that beginning of fourth quarter, there was a leveling off of that decrease on a year over year basis, which came to 20 or 10 or 30 or whatever it was. And then most of the entrepreneurs that we work with started thinking, okay, now I know where the base is. We're not continuing to drop. Right? Because then that's all right. And so now we're seeing, okay, we're going down 30%, we're down 20%, we're down whatever. And if you reflect back, that might take them back to 2014, 2000. For a while there, it was about 2018, 2019 was more like 2018 was like the year over year kind of average, same kind of closed unit number for some markets. So if you flash back to 18, was everybody stressed about 2018? No, not at the time, right? But coming off where we've been, and then coming off of that, yes. So we went to also NAR, National Association of Realtors, went up to almost 1.6. It was like 1.57 million members, up from 1.1. So is there going to be a reduction in the agent count? Yes, there's less units. So that's something that's going to be taking place. It's already started taking place. So you're going to see a reduction. I don't have any factual numbers on that last statement, so I'd have to back that up with some numbers. But my assumption is with a lot of the dues and some associations do in the beginning of the year and things like that, there's probably some attrition already taking place.
Yep.
That said, that same thing that you should also compare your association or whatever you guys as a designated market area or DMA. What is that agent population that you have your ability to recruit from, as an example? And then is that number going down? Same thing. Is it going down 5%, 10%? And then where's your agent count? We want to go up in agent count, right? And this is where recruiting and coming back to that core of recruiting and bringing talent and things like that. So we're going to see agents numbers coming down, coming off. We're going to see, depending on the market, we're going to see some, prices have started coming off. The market's not as hot. We're seeing a little more time on the days on market and things along those lines. How far this goes really depends on some other outside factors. But I think we've seen a lot of the change of like we're going up and this is great, and homes are selling like hotcakes. I always share this one story. When I was back in it was 2006 or early 2006, and the market was crazy like it was in 2022 and I had a newer agent come up to me and said, he was a little in a panic about his listing and hadn't sold yet. And I said, well, let me ask you, how long it's been on the market? And he said, it's been 2 weeks and I've not got one offer. And I'm like, all right, we're just living in like a la land. I mean, this is not how real estate traditionally on average, there are markets up and down. So that's where kind of we were. It was like order taking. It was really a hot market and things along those lines. And now we're coming off of that. So really, this is the opportunity. Where's the opportunity? So that's what's going to take place. Where's the opportunity? The opportunity for the agents, the teams, and the brokerage is really to be the best at their blocking and tackling, running the efficient business, being able to convey value, being very disciplined in what they do through their outreach and their presentations and the value of their presentations and how they convey their value, of how they can support this process. Frankly, you can start gathering and gaining some ground on commissions with the public. As an example, I know they're negotiable. Now your home's on the market longer, so now you have the ability to maybe gain some ground there. Brokerages have some ability to gain some ground with their sales professionals because you know what? Now we're still have to the market, inflation, all these expenses, everything's up, and so the idea of looking at what they're charging and what those commissions are and what any fees or things like that. I've said this here recently, last number of weeks. This is the time. If you're going to make changes to your comp structure, now is the time. Because when you get to end of this year or next year and the market's coming out and it's getting better and people are feeling better, you're going to get killed if you start messing around with fees and changing compensation. So this is an opportunity to make some changes as an owner, as a leader, as a brokerage leader, team leader, or whatever the position might be. If you're going to make some adjustments to that, this is the time to do it. But you have to be very tactful to our earlier conversation about the acquisitions. You can't just say, I'm going to slap on another X or add a fee, I'm going to do this, because that'll blow up on you.
I think that, I love the terminology of, gain some ground on these things. People probably aren't thinking about, at the moment, adjusting their commission rates up a little bit more because they're working a little bit harder,
Right.
changing some of their commission structures. There's a couple of things that I've seen, whether it be through the real estate news part of the industry, is that there's a couple of big brokerages that have put their company splits up, in the sense of that, when I say up, you could take it up or down, whatever way you want to take it, but are saying essentially getting more company dollar in the door because they've known they've given too much away in that good marketplace in order to bring people on because they felt like they needed to grow because everyone else was growing. So I think there's a lot of assessment that people could take based on the opportunity that is created within this market, I guess. But Dean, I wanted to end out sort of our conversation about just some industry news. Or industry noise. And we've spoken a little bit about companies and splits and models and all of that stuff. But there's a few big lawsuits going on at the moment. And I've got to be honest, I haven't dived into them as deeply as probably what I should because, at the end of the day, they really seem very, very early days and very wide perspective. But do you think, a lot of it's talking about the buyer side commission and a lot of it's talking about just a little bit of a threat to the way things are done. Mm-hmm. Do you think that can have an impact? What are your general thoughts on that at the moment?
Yes, it actually was our number one trend in our trend report that came out in December. So it was something, and one of the pages in there has a big iceberg, has a big picture like the industry, and it's something to be aware of. So, there are these lawsuits. One has moved into a class action. I don't know if I saw something, whether maybe the second has moved to a class action as well. And we're really talking about the buy side compensation piece of the equation. And so yes, I think there's two things from it. If they end up all going away and nothing happens, what can you do now to prepare for that, where you win the day no matter what happens? And this is one of the strategies. This is our strategy. I'm talking to our clients, and I'll share it with everybody. So that is something right now. Really look at the buy side, the buyer, as a seller, like you do with a seller. And you go out and you formally present your value. They sign an agreement and say, yes, we're going to hire you. You're going to support us in this process of selling our home. Same thing for the buyer. Really get to the mindset of, you know what, I'm approaching this buyer. I want an exclusive buyer agency agreement. We're going to determine the fee, and so you can control it. Because many times clients will come and organization will be out there and say, I can't control the buy side commission. It's whatever's being offered in the MLS, and that's not accurate, right?
Mm.
You can actually negotiate your fee, and so this is where I would say to prepare and be ready for the worst case scenario. If worst case is they say, hey, you know what, you have to stand on your own. No co-op or no buyer broker is going to be offered from the sellers. Now, can it be negotiated in a transaction? Can it be added to the loan and mortgage? There are different things that are coming about because this is potentially coming our way. So some things are happening. I think we'll be able to. It'll be a smoother path than what potentially we're thinking. Some might think doomsday stuff. But that said, is there value with an agent supporting a buyer in the finding and writing and negotiating of an offer and taking it to closing? Heck yeah, there is. There's a lot there. Do we convey that value in a very clear, concise, compelling way and get someone to be able to commit to a certain dollar amount, no matter what's offered in the MLS currently and things like that, where you can stand on your own and say, this is our fee. So that's our words of wisdom that we put forward, or our guidance, and words of wisdom. We'll see, right? Time will tell. But our guidance is prepare for this, do these things, make sure you should have a buyer agency or a buyer broker presentation, just like a listing presentation. Look at it the same, and then go at it that way, and then really help. And that's something when you talk about gaining ground, you could literally gain ground, because if your average buy side commission, we encourage you to take your total closed units, separate them out, list side by side, and then look at your average commission on either side of this. And that's where you can start controlling some of this, where you can start saying, hey guys, let's start working on our buyer agency presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, I think that, one of the things that we've been really focused on, obviously I'm from Australia. Our company was originated in Australia and New Zealand. In Australia and New Zealand, there's zero buyer side commission. That just isn't the way that you're ever brought into the equation of things. So when I sold real estate in Australia, you just do the listing side. The listings are all you can do in order to make money. The average commission is between 2 and 2.5%. So coming over here, it was a different side of things that, being honest about it, and again, I don't want to off-put anybody, is that I still don't understand the buyer side commission. Don't get me wrong, I see the value in it, okay, but who pays for that? I never understood that. And again, don't get me wrong, we run an organization where 25% of our business is actually buyer side. Our organization is 75% listing side. And this is just for anybody listening that is external to us, is that we made a conscious effort and a conscious focus in order to make sure that we knew that to have any type of control over our business, you focus on the listing element of the business. And sure, the buyer side is there. We're not going to say no to it. Yes, you've got to be more professional about it. But these lawsuits possibly could mean that, the buyer has to pay for that compensation. So therefore, there's downward pressure on that. There's one element of all of this that is exactly the same: listings. Keep thinking about the listing element of your business. And, that's one of the big proud things that we have in our company, is that we're more than triple that of any of the competitors that we operate with from a listing standpoint, because we made it a primary focus, even though it's hard to get people to focus on it. Okay. Is that you have less part-time agents because of that focus. You have better training and better equipped agents. And again, the bar has risen and your signboards are more and you're more visual to the community. So I think it's a win-win in that sense, Dean. Yeah,
listings is the name of the game. It's been the name of the game for many, many decades. Own the listings. So I completely agree with that assessment. And just look at, I remember when my business transitioned from a new agent taking floor duty and gathering buyers and running around and doing rentals and just trying to be able to eat, right? I had to eat what I killed each day. So, and then I really took on that CRS course I mentioned. I really learned about primary markets, went after listings, became a very strong listing agent, had a farm area primary market of 5,000 homes I was marketing to on a monthly basis, had an inventory of listings all the time. My time was controlled more. My revenue, my income was determined at a much higher level. I had buyers coming to me. So that is by far the name of the game. So positioning the organization, and we encourage that with our clients, is you should be positioned. What are you doing on the list side? What are you doing in the SOI space, sphere of influence? What are you doing in the primary market area? What are you doing to generate listings and have that very strong listing presentation so you can capture those listings? Get those signs out there. Let people see them, right?
Absolutely. That's right. Well, Dean, thank you so much for joining us today on Rethink Real Estate. It's been a wealth of knowledge. All of the links will be in the comments and the bio below, guys, so that then you can get in touch with Dean and then also get some of the information and subscribe to some of the great sources of information that I've been subscribed to for such a long time. It's really my knowledge playbook, if you ask me. I don't think that there's many other places at all that you can get better information. And Dean, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it, buddy.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.